As a whole, the fitness industry is worth an estimated $96.7 billion. It has become one of the most profitable industries and has grown exponentially since its inception in the early 1970s. From being a personal trainer to drinking pre-workout on TikTok, the ways to make money within the fitness industry are innumerable. If you can think of something unique, then you can most likely profit off of it. New avenues and niches are carved out every day, and the industry just continues to grow. Sometimes, the growth leads to a beautiful flower, but many times, a weed. However, that is not what this video is going to focus on. The faults of the fitness industry are as innumerable as the ways to make money in it. But today, I simply wanted to go over its history, and to do so, we'll be going into the past to understand where fitness came from and why the industry took off like it did. Before we can talk about the fitness industry, we must first examine the history of fitness itself. Specifically, the history of intentional fitness. It is widely known that humans were at one point hunter-gatherers, constantly on foot looking for any food they could. If they had decided to stop moving at any point in time and settle down into society, then perhaps the human race would have ceased to exist. With days consisting of anywhere from 6 to 20 miles of walking, movement was essential to survival. Fast forward to the next generation of humanity, and we began to settle down into what are known as agrarian societies. Here, we no longer have to constantly be on the move in order to find the food necessary to survive. Instead, we can now facilitate the production of our own food. Crops and animals become our source of food, and our exercise centers around the farming practices associated with such a lifestyle. Agrarian culture gave way to many of the different ancient civilizations that paved the way for modern life. Starting with ancient China, intentional exercise began to become part of the daily life of many due to the teachings of the great philosopher Confucius. Confucius was much ahead of his time and could be thought of as the first fitness guru. He taught the importance of physical exercise and proper diet in order to facilitate the best health outcomes. Health was of the utmost importance, and he was quoted as saying, "To preserve one's mind and to nourish one's spirit is the way to serve nature." The Chinese expounded upon the basic ideas of physical fitness even before Confucius came about, with disciplines that pertained to training for a specific outcome. As early as 2697 BC, an ancient style of wrestling known as Jiu Diao was developed to be used by the Shiyu army in their fight against the Yellow Army during the Battle of Zulu. This type of wrestling makes use of the clothing in order to grapple and get better leverage on the opponent and ultimately take them down. It is considered to be the first martial art under the umbrella of Kung Fu, and is even used today by Chinese police. It is quite similar to the jiu-jitsu-derived Krav Maga used by the Israeli troops. Jiu Diao marked one of the first of the intentional fitness endeavors, and it would become the predecessor of modern-day martial arts. Through the teachings of Confucius and the invention of Jiu Diao, the Chinese Empire began the fitness revolution that would eventually come. Ancient Greece was the first society to fully emphasize the importance of physical fitness. To many, cultivation of the body was as important as cultivating one's mind. The two were synonymous, and you could not achieve one without the other. As medical practices were being developed rapidly during this period, the link between exercise and illness was widely understood. Exercise was not only taught to children attending school, but emphasized to all. It was deemed more important than the other extracurricular subjects like music or art. Schoolboys had to undergo rigorous physical exams as part of their education, and oftentimes their ability to perform such tasks determined to their peers whether or not they were a true man. Although all of the city-states within Greece valued exercise, it formed the basis of society for Spartans. Since Spartans were not as intellectual as Athenians or Corinthians, they made the point of emphasizing physical fitness for the members of their army. From the age of 6 until adulthood, Spartan boys underwent rigorous physical training in order to become fit soldiers. The Spartans were developing the fittest possible super soldiers in order to combat their cognitive deficiencies. Sparta had developed into one of the most fit, settled societies of all time, and their physical achievements continue to be honored today with tough physical endeavors like the Spartan race. Physical fitness was not only used for the purpose of armies, but for the purpose of competition and entertainment. From 8 BC to 4 BC, the first Olympics saw the various city-states compete against each other for the glory of winning and representing one's home. This saw the invention of many of the track and field events traditional to the meets now, such as javelin and running. Outside of war, the Olympics became a way to exhibit pride for one's home, and glory was sought through achievement of medals. The Romans would eventually overtake the Greeks in order to become the world power, and to do so followed in the Spartans' footsteps of emphasizing the importance of physical fitness. Like the Spartans, from a young age, boys were put through rigorous physical tests in order to develop into competent soldiers. However, the difference was not only men ended up being part of the Roman army. Instead, there was a draft of men between the ages of 17 to 60, but all men prepared as though they would be drafted. However, physical fitness did not begin and end with the army service. Instead, you could become a professional athlete of sorts as a professional gladiator. Large circular stadiums, known as amphitheaters, were invented in order to view the events that gladiators participated in. The gladiators would fight against each other, and were constantly avoiding death. On top of their training with weapons, gladiators were also known to train extensively with calisthenic movements. Push-ups, pull-ups, bodyweight squats, and various other movements formed the foundation of their physical training. Gladiators were also known to consume far more food than the average citizen, with high-protein foods like fish being staples of their diet. Their diet and training were simplistic, but many normal Roman citizens who had no concept of such physical endeavors were in awe of the muscularity exhibited by these gladiators. It could be argued that the Romans, specifically those involved in gladiatorial activities, invented our modern-day weight training and discovered the ability to build muscle intentionally through exercise. Around the same time as the Chinese Empire was beginning to exercise because of the teachings of Confucius and the invention of Zhou Diao, India was practicing yoga. As far back as 1000 BC, the Rig Veda, one of the 4 sacred books of Hinduism, mentions yoga, showing how far back its roots may go. Yoga comes from the Sanskrit word yuj, meaning yoke. Yoking is the process of putting on a horse collar, which allows the even distribution of the load of a wagon or other vehicle when a horse is pulling it. In human terms, yuj could be used to describe the even distribution of one's own weight or thoughts. Yoga was first developed as a spiritual endeavor. Its physical benefits were less cared about. Hindu priests developed the practice as a means to achieve a oneness with nature that they observed animals as having. Therefore, they believed through the achievement of a mind-body connection derived from the practice of yoga, they could not only achieve but master this oneness. Eventually, in the modern times, yoga's profound physical benefits would be realized, causing it to become a staple in the fitness industry.